Okay, good morning. Today's daf is daf Pei Zion 87. We have just a few days left to the daf to the Masechet of Gittin. So it's very exciting. We're closing in on finishing the Masechet and getting ready to start Masechet Kedushin, which will follow. So that'll be really nice. So I think Wednesday we'll be starting Masechet Kedushin. So if you know anybody who is interested in joining us, that's a great time to join the daf. Encourage your friends and to join with you. Always wonderful to be able to learn with other people in your community. Okay, so let's begin with the Mishnah. The Mishnah on the bottom of it, Pei Vav Amud Bet. And since we're beginning with a new Mishnah, let's just jump right in. So I had already teed up this very exciting first case where two identically named men and who are married to two identically named women, and the women are no longer in the same town as the men, and they go and send the Gittin with the same messenger. And of course, as you'd expect, as maybe you would have in a sitcom comedy, the messenger confuses the two Gittin. So what in the world are they supposed to do? So let's take a look and we'll get the first case of our Mishnah. If two men send two identical Gittin, meaning that their wives are said have the same names, so arvu, and then the Gittin become confused. Then what the messenger can do is first he can give the two Gittin to the first wife, to wife A, and then they can give the two Gittin to wife B. All right, and so as a result, and indeed the commentaries then all wonder and suggest that in fact, these two Gittin probably should not be given at the exact same time, meaning you don't give both at the same moment, because if you do that, then maybe you will, because each one needs to have its own giving, because you're supposed to give a get, not multiple Gittin at the same time. So one of them will be the actual action, and the second one will be, a possible action, but turn out not to have been anything when it's the wrong document. But you need to give both documents to both women because we don't know which one they're supposed to have. Okay, but levichach, as a result, if given the fact that you have to be able to give both Gittin to both women, avad echad mehen, if one of them gets lost, even though they say the exact same thing, harei hasheni batel, the second one is effectively nullified. It's totally useless because you can't give it to anybody because you don't know. It'll actually, in some ways, make things worse because anybody you give it to is a possibly divorced woman and not a definitely divorced woman. And so as a result, she will absolutely need a new get, and potentially any child who's born might be ended up being considered a mamzer. So that's really a very thing that that's why we have to treat the second one as totally without any validity. So that was case number one in our Mishnah. Case number two in our Mishnah, chamisha shekasvu klal b'tocha get. If you have, so we've sort of now dealt with the fact of you can't use one get for two different couples if it only has, if the naming in it is only for one of them. Meaning, if it's a singular get, if it's a get written in singular, John is divorcing Jane, so then that's not going to work, even if you have for two Johns who are married to two Janes. However, if you have chamisha shekasvu klal b'tocha get, if you have five people, even five people, it could be any number of people, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., any number of people who wrote a common get. So they wrote, and we'll see what it means well, let's take a look. We continue in the ish ploni megarish ploni to ploni ploni ploni. So they say this one's divorcing that one, and that one's divorcing this one, and this one's divorcing that one, so that all of them are clear. Va'edim milamata, and you have witnesses signed below. Kulan ksherim. It's a get for all of them. So how do you do it, right? You only have one document. But you have to give that same document. First, you give it to wife A, then you give it to wife B, then you give it to wife C, then you give it to wife D, then you give it to wife E. And then you've done the 5 divorces. However, hayakosev tofes l'kol echad ve'echad. Now, again, there's the toref and the tofes. The toref is the key elements of the name and the date and core elements of what you need to say. The tofes is the stuff that is the rest, is the language of this person is divorced and they're separated and they're etc. And they're not going to be supported, and all the different details of the get that are identical between every single get. And so that piece, that tofes, if you have a separate tofes for each and every one of them, the ha'edim milamata, and then the witness is signed below. Esha edim nikranimo kasher. Well, then the last get, which is the one at the very bottom, that's the only one that's kosher, because we might think that you had all these other gittin written on a piece of paper, and you didn't, but there were no signatures on it because you weren't set to finalize it. But finally, the sofer found somebody who was actually ready to finalize their divorce, and that was the last couple. And so that's the one that is valid. All the other ones are not. Okay, so now Montana, who is the Gemara picks up? Who's the Tana of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yirmiyah. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says the local Rabbi Lazar. It can't be Rabbi Lazar, because Rabbi Lazar, remember, to Rabbi Lazar, Kavan de Amar Edi Misirikarti. He's the one who says that who matters? It's the witnesses on who watch the delivery, right? The witnesses who watch the delivery are the one. That's Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Meir says that it's the witnesses on the document, and Edi Chesima Karti, and Rabbi Lazar is the one who says that it's Edi Misira Karti. So you have to see the delivery, because Halo Yade Bahaminai who come Garsha. But here, the witnesses in that first case, right, where they see the people, they see the messenger deliver get A to wife number 1, and then get B to wife number 1, they will never know which of those ha lo yade bahai minai who come garsha. They won't know which of them is the one that enables the woman to be divorced. So as a result, it doesn't make sense that it could be Rebbe Lazar. So Abaye Amar, no, Afilu Tema Rebbe Lazar. You can in fact say that maybe it's Rebbe Lazar, because Ema, I'll tell you, Deboy Rebbe Lazar, Ksiva Lishma, that even though Rebbe Lazar focuses on the Eidei Mesira, on the giving of the get, he still requires that the get be written for the specific woman, but Nesina Lishma Mi Boy. But maybe he does not need that they know which document was for this particular woman. So although you need the document to have been written for the specific woman, and you need witnesses to see the document being conveyed, you do not need to know for sure which of the documents is the valid document that was conveyed, because you don't need to see the Nesina Lishma. And so as a result, we can even say that it's Rebbe Lazar. Okay, so now that we've dealt with the first case, we turn to the second cases, the second 2 cases of our Mishnah, where we have 5 people writing a common get. So, Chamisha Shekasvu Klal, if they use a klal, a common text, Heichidami Klal, what does it mean by klal? Heichidami Tofis, what does it mean by Tofis? So, Rabbi Yochanan says, Zman Echad L'chulan, if you use one date for all 5 sections, Zeu Klal, that makes it a common text. So even though you'll have in the text itself 5 different repetitions of this man is divorcing this woman, and these are all the separations that they're going to have, etc., etc. So that is going to be fine. If there's one date, it's all a common text, and one set of witnesses at the bottom will be fine. Zman l'chol echad ve'echad. However, if you have a date for each and every one, zeu tofis, that's considered a separate document for each, and as a result, that's going to be that only the last one, only the document that has the last of the dates, only the get that has the last of the dates will be valid, because that's the only one that the witnesses have effectively signed on. The Reish Lakish disagrees. Reish Lakish says that no, one date is not enough to be to make everything a single text. If you have different underlying language, even if you have one date, that is not a single document. What does it mean that klal? Because of anu ploniu ploni gerashnu nishosenu plonis uplonis. It's where you have a common language of that we, A and B and C and D and E, all divorce A1, A2, A3, I mean, A1, B1, A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime. That's where it's going to be considered a common text, because there, all of them are effectively grouped together. Okay, so Maskeflo Rabbi Abba once said to Rabbi Yochanan de Amar. So now he's going to first object. We're going to first have questions on Rabbi Yochanan, and then we're going to ask a question on two questions on Rabbi Yochanan, and then we'll ask a question on Reish Lakish. So Maskeflo Rabbi Abba Rabbi Yochanan de Amar Zman Echad L'Kulan Zehu Klal, that if in fact one date for everyone is considered the common text, maybe when the witnesses signed, they were only signing on the last section, because we have a following brisa. Milo Tanya, didn't we have the following brisa? Edim chasumim al she'elas shalom beget. If a get has greetings, hello, how are you, at the very end, we have to be worried that is all they're signing. And as a result, pasul, the get is not valid, is not kosher. So chayshinan shema al she'elas shalom chasmu, because we have to be worried that they were signing on the greeting. So the Gemara answers, Lav itmar Allah. No, 1 second. With respect to that brisa, we have the following teaching. Amar Rabbi Abahu, L'didim parsha li minei de Rabbi Yochanan. This was explained to me by Rabbi Yochanan. Shalu pasul, this shalu kasher. Meaning, if you end the get with a period, and then you add language of, and I'm asking how you're doing, and then you add language of, I am also I'm asking how you're doing, and you don't have any connection, there's no and to it, well, then that's where the get is going to be invalid. But visha'alu kasher. But if in fact there's an and connecting the question of how are you, well, then the get is going to be valid, because it's clear that the witnesses are signing on the entire thing, because it's a single document. It's become a single document, not two multiple documents. So hachinami diksiv be ploni uploni. So the point is here we have an and connection connecting each one, and so as a result, that's why it's going to be a valid get. So each one, again, this is not the case of Reish Lakish where you have the three names consecutively, but rather it's person John hereby divorces Jane, Bob hereby divorces Barbara, Charlie hereby divorces Carla. So we have A, B, and C divorcing, and the point is that even though they're separate, we have an and between them. So again, so we have all three. John divorces Jane, and Bob divorces Barbara, and Charlie divorces Carla. So you have all three of them with an and between them, and so that's why it's all going to be considered a single document. The Sue, 1 second, we have another question. Rabbi Yochanan de Amr's man l'kol echad zeu tofes. 1 second. If in fact Rabbi Yochanan is saying, when do we say that every document has its own separateness, and therefore when we have signatures at the very bottom, we're going to only focus on the bottommost document, and so as a result we're going to ignore all the Gittin that are above it? Well, and that's when they each have their own date, according to Rabbi Yochanan. My area mashum tofis. Why do you have to have anything about the fact that each document has its own content. We have a general principle that you're not allowed to write the document during the day and sign the document at night. As Rashi puts it, Rashi has it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi on Pei Zayin Amud Aleph. The Tepukle, the Habukulu Bar Mibasra, Nichtavu Hayom, Benichtamu La'achar Zman. All of them except for the last one, because all of them have a different date, right? They all have their own date. And at the moment, we are assuming that each of those dates is different. So as a result, they all of the ones before the last one have a different date from the date that it was then it was signed. Because the last ones didn't sign. The witnesses didn't sign until the last document was written, and that has a different date. Now Rashi pauses and says, "Nechtam b'layla lav dafka." We're not actually talking about at night. Ela mishum lishna de misnisin nakat lay. It's not a parak sheni, because we learned back on Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, nechta b'yom v'nechta b'layla puzzle. V'kol shekain l'machar o liyoma okra. And certainly for the next day or a following day. So the bottom line is that it doesn't necessarily mean that it was specifically written at night, signed at night, and that's the problem. But no, the problem is that it was not signed on the same day that it was written. So isn't that going to be the problem with a toe-face document, according to Rabbi Yochanan, and not the fact that you have separate documents? So Amrle Mark Shisha Braid the Rav Chisda Rav Ashi. So it was explained to Rav Ashi. Hachi Amrina Mishmei the Rabbi Yochanan, that this was what Rabbi Yochanan taught. Dichsiv behu b'chad b'shaba, that everyone has the same date. They all have Sunday on the date, and so as a result, because each one has Sunday on the date, so as a result, it's not going to be a problem because of the signing being on a later date. And so as a result, the problem is that it's going to be one document, it's going to be multiple documents, and we can think that maybe the signatures were only for the last of the documents and not last of the Gittin that were written in the document, and not for the other ones. Okay. So now that we had these two challenges on Rabbi Yochanan's approach, so we're going to now have one challenge on the approach of Reish Lakish, and Ravina will offer that challenge. So Amar le Ravina le Ravashi. Ravina asked Ravashi the Reish Lakish to Amar Zman echad lechulan nami tofes havi. According to Reish Lakish, if there's one date at the top, and then you have 5 separate languages of divorce in the document. So he's going to say that that's only one that is considered 5 documents, and so only the bottom one will be kosher. What's the story of a common text? Diksiv behachi ani ploni uploni gerashnu nishosein uplonis uplonis nimtza ushtei nashim miskarshos beget echad. Well, 1 second. If you have each one if you say A, B, C, D is divorcing A, B, C, A1, A prime, B prime, C prime, and D prime, the problem is that it looks like A is divorcing A prime, C, B prime, C prime, and D prime, and B is divorcing A prime, B prime, C prime, and D prime, and C is divorcing, meaning each of the husbands looks like they're divorcing all of the different wives, and you're not allowed to use, one can't, even if one has multiple wives, one can't use a single get to divorce both of them. Correct. And so as a result, isn't that what it's going to look like? Torah amra because of law. You're not, the Torah says you can only divorce her. You can't divorce her and her friend. And so as a result, how can Reish Lakish say that when you have one date, you can have what's the case of one date being good only if it's not based on one date, but rather based on this common language? How could this in fact work for all 5 spouses? That's the question that Ravina asked, because it looks like each one is divorcing multiple women. So Dahadar Kasav. So the explanation is Rav Ashi must have answered that afterwards, after writing the generic language of A, B, C, and D are divorcing A prime, B prime, C prime, and D prime, we say Ploni Gerish Plonit, Uploni Gerish Plonit. That just to clarify, A is divorcing A prime, B is divorcing B prime, C is divorcing C prime, and D is divorcing D prime, and E is divorcing E prime. So we say each one separately afterwards. So Amrle Ravina Rav Ashi. Well, 1 second. Maishna Mahadatanya. 1 second. Once you're telling me that 2 women can be divorced using that same get, Hakosiv Kol Nechasa, that you can't divorce 2 women using the same get, I don't understand, because we have the following. Hakosiv Kol Nechasav L'Shnei Avadav. So how do we, if you write a single document that that gives all of your possessions to 2 slaves, Kanu, they have acquired everything. And the problem is that each of them now own half of the other. So they have to free each other. But the bottom line is we see that this document, that is one document, somehow frees 2 slaves. And the problem is, let's take a look in Rashi. This is Rashi almost smack in the middle of the narrow lines. It's right opposite where the lines become wider in the Gemara. Umayshnaha mehadatanya, the Eved Gamar la meisha. Because we have the same language of law by both a slave and a wife, we learn that the same rules apply to freeing a slave, or similar rules apply to freeing a slave and to divorcing a wife. V'lo paslinan lahu mishum v'lo la v'lechavarta. But yet we seem not to complain in this case that this is a situation that this should be puzzle, because you're effectively freeing her and her friend. Because you're freeing 2 of them in one fell swoop. The dummy l'kamaisa the Reish Lakish, and it's similar to the case of Reish Lakish. Anu plonu uploni gerashnu neshenu ploni to plonit. So that makes it very similar to the case of Reish Lakish, where we say the 2 people are divorcing the 2 people. So amai bailama hadar umichta ploni gerish plonit. Why do we really need to have the end comment at the end of this one's divorcing that one and that one's divorcing this one? Uploni duploni, uploni plonit. Ha hacha kasav kolnich say luploni uploni. Here avadai. Here this person has written all of my possessions go to these 2 different servants. V'ktani kanu kol nechasim, and they say that they acquired everything. And each of them is now half free and half a servant to the other. And each one has to free the other half of the other one, and then they'll be totally free. So we see that this single document seems to work. So shouldn't we be able to have one document of A, B, C, and D divorces A prime, B prime, C prime, and D prime, and not have to repeat A divorces A prime and B divorces B prime, etc.? So no, the lavo kimna b'shnei shtarot, because in the end, that brisa that talks about one who writes all of his property to 2 slaves simultaneously, that brisa is actually talking about where it is done in 2 documents. It was not, in fact, done in 1 document. And so as a result, if in fact we want to have 1 document, we need to go back and repeat the concept of ploni gerish plonit, uploni gerish plonit. Okay. All right. So now that we have questioned both and we have survived the questions, now we're going to note that we've got a brisa like each of our 2 opinions. So Tanya Kavasi to Rabbi Yochanan, Tanya Kavasi to Reish Lakish. We actually see that Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish each have support among the Tanaim. So Tanya Kavasi to Rabbi Yochanan, we've got a brisa that follows Rabbi Yochanan because of the following: Chamisha shekasu b'tocha get. If you've got 5 different people, that 5 men who are written in the get, ish ploni megarish ploni, uploni uploni, uploni ploni. So we see that each of them has a separate text for themselves. But uzman echad lekulan, but you have one date for all of them. So that's the Rabbi Yochanan situation. The ha'edim milamata, and the one set of witnesses are all at the very, very bottom. Kulan ksherim. Every single one of those divorces is kosher. V'tzinasin l'kol achas v'achas, and you have to give the get to each and every woman. Zman l'kol echad be'echad. However, if you have one date, have a different date for each and every of the divorces, v'ha'edim milamata, and the only signatures are at the very bottom. Es shaha'edim nikranimo kasher. Only the bottom one, where the witnesses would be read with those with the document, that's the one that's kosher. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, and so that clearly the Tanakama of this brisa is clearly like Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, Im yesh revach beinehen puzzle. However, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira adds the following concept, that if there's space between the different documents, even though there's one date, if there's space between them, then we're going to say it's puzzle, because maybe these last signatures were only on the last one, and there was space left over in order for other signatures to sign, and they weren't signed. The imlav, however, if not, kasher. She'ein zman mafsikin, because there's no date that separates the different sections, so it's all one document. So again, the Tanakama matches very up nicely with Rabbi Yochanan. And Tanya Kavasi de Rish Lakish, we got a similar brisa that now holds like Rish Lakish. Chamisha shekatsu klal b'to kaget. You got 5 different situations where they are all written in common with the get. Anu ploni uploni gerashnu v'nishosenu ploni uploni. So again, here instead of ploni gerish megarish plonit ploni megarish plonit, we have ploni u ploni, gerashnu nishosenu ploni to ploni. So we have, again, instead of each one getting their own language, all 5 are using a common language, and we have A, B, C, and D, E all written together. And then ploni gerish ploni to ploni gerish ploni. And then at the end, we have each one separate, zman echad l'kulan, and you have one time for everyone, va'edim milamata, and the witnesses are at the bottom. Kulan ksherim. Every single one is kosher. V'tzinasin l'kol achas v'achas. And again, it's all one document, so you have to give the document to each and every wife. However, zman l'kol echad v'echad, if in fact you had a different writing of the date for each one, the ravach l'kol echad v'echad, or a space between each and every one, va'edim milamat, and the witnesses are below, esha edim nikrani mo kasher, then it's only the one that the witnesses would be written with. Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Meir adds, afal pisha and revach banehem psulim, puzzle. Even though there's no space between them, it's going to be puzzle. Shazman mafsikin. It's enough that if you, so actually I said or, but actually I guess in the Tanakama's position is and. If you have a separate date and space between them, then it's going to be a puzzle. But Rabbi Meir says, no, as long as you have different dates, that's enough to be a puzzle. B'reish Lakish, my area, Zman l'kol echad be'echad. Well, 1 second, why do you need to have that each and every date be separate? Ha'amar, Zman echad l'kulan nami tofes havi. That he's the Rabbi Reish Lakish is the one who said that even if you have one date, but you have 5 separate sections below, that it's also going to be not kosher. So, but in our brisa that we just cited, it focused on separate dates. So Hani Mili, Hekedolo Arvinhu Mi'ikara. No, well, the problem with the secret situation where there are separate dates, that's where where a common dates are going to be a problem. That's when they weren't initially grouped together. But if in fact they were grouped together initially, so as a result, that effectively makes it all as if they're one document. Well, then if in fact they have separate dates, then they'll be separated. But if not, lo. So again, 2 different concepts. If in fact you've got separate language for each get in the document, so you've got 5 languages of A divorcing A prime, B divorcing B prime, etc. and you've got no commonality in that, then even if you've got one date, that's not going to work according to Reish Lakish. On the other hand, if you have A, B, C, D, and E are all divorcing A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime, and E prime, and then you repeat, A is divorcing A prime, B is divorcing B prime, C is divorcing C prime, then you have, it's clearly intended to be a commonality. And then if you've got one date, it's all common and it's going to be fine. But if you've got 5 dates, then that's what the Brisa is talking about. And so as a result, when you have 5 dates, only the last one will be a valid get.
What would be the reason from a practical standpoint of writing one get for 5 separate people? Was obviously it must have been done because it's written about.
Well, so the most logical explanation that I have is that, paper or parchment was a rare, a commodity, an expensive commodity. And so as a result, based on the lack of availability, that might be the reason. So, okay. So that brings us to the next Mishnah, and the next Mishnah, discusses some situations where, we've already talked about in this Gemara. Often the Gemara is structured so that the Gemara leads nicely into the next Mishnah. And what did we just talked about? We've talked about where the witnesses are, the one set of witnesses are all at the bottom. But now what happens if the witnesses are somewhere else in the document? And that's what we're going to talk about now. Shnei Gittin shekasavan zeh b'tzad zeh. You have 2 Gittin that are written next to each other. And we're going to talk about this topic, both this Mishnah and the next Mishnah. And you have 2 witnesses that, and indeed we also referenced this Mishnah earlier, I think yesterday we referenced this Mishnah. So we have 2 Gittin, shekasavan zeh b'tzad zeh. We have that they're written right next to each other. Ushnayim edim ivrim, and we have 2 Hebrew witnesses, meaning 2 witnesses who are signing in Hebrew. And they write, right? You write Hebrew from the right to the left. So they wrote across the bottom from the right to the left. They wrote their names, and so their names began on the right one and continued to the left one. Ushnayim edim Yevanim, and 2 Greek witnesses, meaning that they signed in Greek, and we're going to follow the Rambam and the Bartanura understanding here because I think it makes the most, follows the language the easiest, that you had them write their name in Greek from left to right, okay? And so, by mitachazeh l'tachazeh, and they wrote their name underneath the 2 Hebrew signatures from the left one to the right one. So the document on the right-hand side, which can read very easily with the signatures, that one is going to be kosher. Eid echad, but the other one, the left one, is going to be not kosher. Eid echad ivri ve'eid echad yivani. If in fact you had the signature from the right, then the signature from the left, then the signature from the right, and then the signature from the left, meaning you alternated the Hebrew and Greek signatures, and they each go from one side to the other side. Shnei and psulim, both of the Gittin are puzzle. We are not going to be sure that which one was written in a particular way, which one they were intending to sign. So blit kasher hai beruvain. V'hai beven Yaakov 8. Well, 1 second, the Gemara asks, if in fact we have the writing from the right to the left, and on the right-hand side we have get 1, and on the left-hand side we have get 2, and now we have Ruvain written on the right side, and Ben Yaakov Aid written on the left side, why don't we allow the just presence of Ruvain to be a valid get for the right one, and Ben Yaakov Aid to be a valid get for the left one? Why shouldn't that work? V'hai, all right. V'hai Ben Yaakov Aid, right? Dahatznan. We're going to learn in the next Mishnah at the very end of today. Ben Ish Ploni Aid Kasher. If you just say your parent's name and you say you're the son of so and so, that is a valid witness. So because of Reuven ben Akama. So no, the issue is, let's re-understand our case. It's not that Reuven is written under get 1 and Ben Yaakov Aid is written under get 2, but rather it's Reuven Ben is written under get 1 and Yaakov Aid is written under get 2. So as a result, that's why you can't have Ben Yaakov Aid be sufficient. Right, because of Reuven ben Akama, the Yaakov Aid Abasra. So 1 second, Belis Kasher Hai Reuven Bain. So let's say the first one is kosher based on the name Reuven Ben, and Belis Kasher Hai be Yaakov Aid. Let's say the second one is the kosher because of Yaakov Aid. Now, on some level, we're saying that actually there were two different people. One was Reuven Ben, and the second is Yaakov Aid. So let's say that both of those are successful signatures. Dehatnan ish ploni aid kasher. If all you have is ploni aid, that's going to be kosher. Delo kasav aid. So all right, so we'll say that he didn't write the term aid because all he wrote is Reuven ben Yaakov, and so and Reuven ben Yaakov we'll see is sufficient even if you don't write the word aid. But ploni ish ploni requires the word aid in order for it to be kosher. So that's one explanation. Lo'olam de kasav aid, or you could say he did write the word aid, or udiyadinan v'hakasima delab diyakovu, or we know that the signature doesn't belong to Yaakov, meaning we know that this is all Reuven's signature, and so as a result, that's why we're not going to allow Yaakov aid to be a valid signature because we know it's not Yaakov's signature. Well, Vidoma Bishma Da'avu Achasim. Maybe Reuven signed the first part of the document as Reuven, and then he signed the second part of the document as using his father's name. So Lo Shavik Inishmei V'Chasim Shma Da'avua. Well, a person doesn't sign leave off his own name and sign using his father's name. So that's not likely to have happened. The Dilma Simana Shavye. Well, 1 second. You can use an X marks the spot. You know, if you have a graphic that works for you, that can be used as your signature because Daha Rav Sayer Kavra, Rav would draw a fish as his signature. Rabbi Chanina Charusa, Rav Chanina would draw a palm branch. Rav Chisda Samech, he would draw a samech. Rav Hoshia Ayin, he would draw an ayin. Rabba Bar Ravuna Sayer Machusa, he would draw the pole of a ship, of the ship's mast. So lo chatzav inish l'shavei. So that's the question, right? The question is maybe the term Yaakov was used as his symbol. No, lo chatzav inish l'shavuye l'shma de'avua simana. Person's not going to make his father's name his signature symbol. So as a result, that's not likely to have happened. So it makes sense to say that the right-hand get is the one that was signed and the left-hand get was not signed. Okay, so that's the and indeed the point is lo chutzpah. Person would have chutzpah to use that because it's the lack of respect that the one's showing to their parent. So now v'likasher hai b'shnei edim ivrim likasher hai b'shnei edim yivanim. Why don't we do what's totally logical and say that the two people who signed in Hebrew are signing for the right-hand get, and the two people who signed in Greek are signing for the left-hand get, because the Hebrew ones are written from the right and the Greek ones are written from the left. We're going to learn in our next Mishnah at the end of today. Get ivrit ve'edav yivanit ve'edav ivrit kasher. Doesn't make a difference if you mix languages between the writing of the get and the signatures on the get. Well, and if you say that the problem is that it's separated by two lines that are used for the Hebrew signatures, that doesn't work. And that's why it's not valid. Rather, Chizkiah says, you are allowed to fill up space using relatives' names, even though those relatives' names are not valid witnesses. So it's okay to have other names between the signatures on the document and the document itself. Well, that, you know what? That is why Zeiri actually says that in fact it is a kosher get, and so it's totally fine. But the Tana Didan, but our Tana, Dilma Gundalis Chasim, maybe they signed in an unusual manner. The Kula Echad Hu de Chasimi. And really, all of them are really trying to sign only the right hand get. And so as a result, we're going to say that that's the problem. So therefore, that's not going to work. Well, 8 Echad Ivri, 8 Echad Yavani. Well, 1 second, why, when you have one Hebrew and one Greek witnesses, kasher high be'ed echad ivri be'ed echad yavani, why not just allow the first two witnesses to serve as the Gittin get as the signatures for this get, and let the other two witnesses serve for the other one. You're allowed to have two people sign the get with one signing in Hebrew and one signing in Greek. Well, again, Zeiri comes through for us and says, yeah, you know what? That is in fact the case. We would say that that's kosher. But the Tana Didan, but our Tana says the following. Again, Dilma Gundalis Chasim. Maybe they signed in an unusual manner. Namely, they signed from right to left, even though they signed in English. In Greek. So meaning that they saw that the name of this witness is actually on the right and the name of the father is actually on the left. Utlasa achad v'chad achad. And maybe in fact you end up with three witnesses signed for one and one witness signed for the other. And so as a result, it's possible that either get may have only one signature. And so as a result, both of them become not kosher. Because in fact, we're saying not only might the English one have, the Greek one may have been signed in the wrong direction, but similarly, the Hebrew one may have been signed in the wrong direction. And so as a result, when we have the alternatives, we're going to have this question. But when we have it all together, so then we'll rely on that Hebrew is written in generally in one direction. All right, so Shiar Mixas Haget. So now we have a Mishnah that's going to cover the topics that we just mentioned, namely the signatures in the different languages. So we just mentioned that Mishnah, so we're going to look it up. So Shiar Mixas Haget, if you had a little bit left over of the get after you finish the first column, Uksavo B'daf Hasheni, and so you therefore start a new column of the get, Edim Milamata, and the witnesses are signed beneath it. And here it notes that the Tiferes Yisrael suggests that it's talking about the witnesses that are signed beneath the short column, the second column, kasher. That is going to be valid. And we're going to ask, how can we know that it in fact is all one document? We're going to ask that question in the Gemara. So that we'll see, God willing, tomorrow. So chasmu edim berosh hadaf. So 1 second, if the witness is signed, now we're going to deal with other places that the signatures can happen. If they sign at the very top of the page, minatzad, or on the side, o me'acharav, or on the back of a get pashut, when the get is open, because remember, we had a separate get where you folded it and tied it. In the case where you folded it and tied it, you would sign it on the folds. And so that would be on the back, and that would be kosher. But here we're not talking about that kind of folded get. And so as a result, it's got to be signed on the front, pasul. Then in all of those cases, the signature is in the wrong place. We can't be sure that it's for this particular thing, and therefore the get is pasul. Hikif rosho shel zeh, b'tzad rosho shel zeh. If you have two gittin that the tops of both of them are on the same side. So basically you took a document, on the lower third of the document, you wrote a get, then you turn the document around, and on the lower third of the document, you wrote a get. And now what happens with the signatures, and the witness is signed in the middle, shnei and psulin, both documents are invalid. Or what happens if you flip it around? And so you wrote from the top down to the middle on one get, and then you turn the document around and you wrote from the top of the document to the middle a second get. And again, so that the two ends are proximate to one another. V'ha'edim be'emsa, and again, the witnesses are now in the middle. Esha edim nikranimo kasher. The one with the witnesses that are written in the right direction, right? Because the witnesses are also writing across the document. If you read it with one of the Gittin, whichever one the Gittin is, the get is in the right side for, so then that's the one that will be kosher, and the other one will be puzzle, because presumably the witness is signed in the same direction as the get that was written. So Rosho Shalzeh Bitzad Sofo Shalzeh. What if you wrote them get number 1 at the top and get number 2 at the bottom, and again Va'edim Be'emsa? Well, then at She'edim Nikrin B'Sofo Kasher, the one where the get witnesses are written at the end, so namely the top get, that will be valid, and the other one will not. Get Sheksavo Ivrit Ve'edav Yivanit. If the get is written in Hebrew and the signatures are in Greek, Yivanit Ve'edav Ivrit, or vice versa. Eid Echad Ivri Ve'eid Echad Yivani, or one witness is Hebrew writing and one is Greek. Ksav Sofer Echad of Eid, or you have the writing of the Sofer and one witness. And as we've seen before, there's a debate about what this means, and we understand at least the Rav's explanation is that we're talking about where the scribe is also a witness in the document, kasher, then it is kosher. So ish ploni aid kasher. If you just have the person's first name and the word aid, that's kosher. Ben ish ploni, the son of what the father's name is, aid, also kosher. Ish ploni ben ploni, ish ploni ben ish ploni, below cus of aid. If you say that this person, the son of that person, and you don't write the word aid, kasher, that's also kosher. And that's what the pure-minded people in Yerushalayim would do. They would not use the language of aid. Kasav chanichaso v'chanichasa kasher. And finally, if instead of using the parent's name, you use a chanicha, you use a it defines it as a surname, but it's actually unclear. There's a debate whether this refers to sort of like a last name kind of surname, or it's an ancestor's name, but not a father's name. So it could be a grandfather or a great grandfather, etc. Their name. And so we'll see about all of that, God willing, tomorrow. But again, we'll begin with understanding how it is that we can say that this is not one, that this is, that when you sign on the left-hand column for a get that begins in the right-hand column and continues to the left-hand column, how we can be sure that it's all one document and not a document that has been ripped and is actually two different documents. So that's what we'll talk about first tomorrow, and God willing, we'll be dealing with that in tomorrow's daf. I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom, and keep an eye out on the WhatsApp to see the time that we will begin, God willing, tomorrow, hopefully with Ellie, and look forward to continuing our learning next week. And I believe that next week we will be beginning when we begin on Wednesday. I believe that we will be beginning with Maseches Kedushin. So that's very exciting. Have a great day and a wonderful Shabbos.
You too, Rabbi. Enjoy the family.
Thank you so much.